If you're watching this video, then chances are you've worked with authentication before. Maybe you've tried to add it to an API, to a website, to some other type of app, and you've probably seen how time-consuming and difficult it can be to do that. Not to mention, you can introduce a ton of security vulnerabilities into your application if you try to do this, say, on your own from scratch, where you're storing passwords, hashing passwords, and all of that mess that you really don't want to have to do. In this video, though, I'm going to show you the easiest authentication I've ever used, which is called Passage. Now, Passage provides biometric authentication, so you can do Face ID, you can do it with your finger. If you have Windows Hello Face, you can use that, or if none of those work, then you can get an email sent to you and click on that. Now, this video is sponsored by Passage. However, they are super simple to use, and this is probably the authentication I'm going to use going forward, considering it takes literally a few lines of code to add this to an app. Now, of course, Passage is free. You do not have to pay to use this, and you can create an account at the link in the description and then actually start building your applications. Now, in this video specifically, I'm going to show you how you build a React front end that's authenticated with Passage and a Flask backend. So we'll have the front end authenticated, you'll sign in on the front end, and then you can send proxy requests to the backend, and those will be authenticated as well. Of course, if you want to use a different tech stack, you can do that as well. They have pretty good documentation that shows you how to do this for pretty much any language and framework that you can think of. But again, here we're going to do React and Flask. For now, though, let me give you a quick demo of how this works, and you will see, well, how it works. So in this case, we have Passage demo. I have a login form. I can also click here for register. Now, I didn't build these. Passage provides these, and you can customize these if you want. For now, though, let's log into an account that I already have. So techwithtim@gmail.com. Let's click continue. And then notice what it says here. It says, okay, it's making sure it's you. You're going to log in with biometrics. So log into your account with the method you already used to unlock your device. Now, I don't have Windows Hello Face on here, which is like Face ID for Windows. If I had that, it would have popped up my camera. Instead, though, it's asking me for the PIN for my computer. So let me type that in, and then it should sign me in. I'm now brought to this page. You can see my email is here, and I can test my backend authentication by clicking this button and seeing if I send an authorized request. Now, I'll play a demo on my phone while I continue to go through this so that you can see that it works a bit different on the phone, and it will bring up my Face ID. It automatically detects the device, and then it shows the correct authentication method based on that device. And again, if that doesn't work, then it will send you an email, and you can sign in with a magic link. All right, so that is it for the demo. This is really cool. Again, this is super simple to do. You're going to see how easy it is in a second. So now let me hop over to VS Code, and we'll start building out this project where we have an authenticated front end and back end using biometric data. All right, so I'm here in VS Code, which is the editor I'm going to use for this video. Feel free to use whatever you want, but just open up some folder or directory. In this case, I have one called Passage Tutorial. It's on my desktop, and this is where we'll start creating our different apps. We're going to start with the React front end, then we'll go to the Python backend. This is not a tutorial for complete beginners, but you can watch it and you can see how I add the authentication. Then that will help you if you're adding it to your own app, or you can do, every single step that I do in this video. It's up to you, but I'm not going to explain all of the React basics, like what a hook is, what a component is. I have a whole React series on my channel, so I'll leave that in the description in case you want to watch it. And then same thing for Python and Flask. I'm just going to go through building the app. I'm not going to explain all of the Flask concepts and that stuff. I have a Flask tutorial on my channel as well that you could watch if you want to learn that. Anyways, we need to install a few things here before we get started. So we need Node.js. I assume most of you already have that. I'll leave a link in the description though. And then we're going to use something called ngrok. Now, when we're using Passage, if we want to get access to the full suite of biometric features that it has in authentication, we need to have SSL and HTTPS secure connection. So in order to do that, we're going to use this tool called ngrok, which allows us to create kind of a tunnel or a proxy from a temporary public address or public domain to our local host machine. So this will allow you to use this from, well, any computer that you want, and it will forward the request from that temporary public URL to your local host machine, server, whatever you want to call it. It's quite cool, but you do need to download this. So link in the description. It's also just ngrok.com. Download it, and then what you're going to have to do after you download this is you're going to have to extract it from a zip folder. So I've just placed it right inside of where I'm going to be doing this. So inside of Passage Tutorial, I have the exe. And then what you can do is when you're in the same directory as this file, you can type ngrok and then whatever the command is that you want to run. However, you do need to create an account on ngrok and get an authorization token. So just scroll down on this page where the download is. And if you don't have an auth token, then sign up. Since I'm already signed up, it's going to bring me to the dashboard. And then here you'll see a command where it says ngrok auth token and then whatever the token is. Copy that, paste that in your terminal wherever the ngrok.exe file is, and then you'll be good to go and you can start using ngrok. Okay, so now that we have that installed, and I'm assuming you have Node.js installed, we're going to create our React front end using an npx command. So I'm going to type npx create and then React app, and then the name of my app I want to be front end. It will make a front end directory for me inside of here. So let's hit enter. Okay, that's going to take a second. While that happens, let's run the ngrok command so you can see how this works, and then we'll set up our passage account. So I'm going to say ngrok http and then 3000. Now, ngrok obviously is the name of the command. HTTP is what type of request we want to be forward. And then 3000 is the port that our React application is going to be running on. This is just the default port. So when I do this, let's make this a bit larger. We can close that here. You're going to see that it opens up this page here, and we get these URLs. And these URLs are forwarding to HTTP localhost 3000. So if I send a request to this URL right here, it will send it to localhost 3000, get the result, and then send it back. So very cool. Again, this is temporary. So if you restart ngrok, this URL will change, and this URL will not exist forever. You have to, like, I guess, it'll give you a new URL after a certain period of time. I think you can pay and have it stay for longer, but we're just going to use the free version. We don't need to pay for that. For now, though, we want to copy this HTTPS URL because that's what we're going to use for our app, and just have that on your clipboard for the next step here. So now we're going to go back to the Passage website. We need to make an account here for our auth. So sign up if you don't already have an account. I'll leave this link in the description. I have one, so I'm going to log in. And then what you can do is create a new application. So for our application, I'll just call this tutorial. Call yours whatever you want. The authentication origin, this is where we're going to paste that ngrok URL because that's how we're going to access our website from now on. And just note that if this changes, you're going to have to change the authentication origin, and I'll show you how you do that in a second. And then the redirect URL, this is what page you want to go to based off this base URL when you sign in. So in our case, we want to have a profile page, and the profile will just show us if the user signed in, what their email is. So for now, we'll just put /profile. We can change that later too. And then we can choose our tech stack. I'm just going to go with React and Python because that's what we're using. Okay, create new application. And then it actually tells us how we can do this, right? So you can see how simple this is. We install with one command, and then we add a passage element to our React front end. That then gives us the login form, the sign up form, all that kind of stuff. And then for Python, if we want, we can have a look at the documentation here or the GitHub example. I will link some of this stuff in the description, or at least the link to the documentation, so you can read about other tech stacks and a bunch of features, because I'm not going to show you everything in this video. For now, though, let's just go to our dashboard. And what we want to look for right now is the application ID. So let's copy that application ID because we're going to need that. And now what we want to do is go back here, and our front end has been created. So inside of our front end directory, I'm going to make a new file called .env, and I just need to put this app ID inside of here. So I'm going to say React app underscore passage underscore, and we'll say app underscore ID is equal to, and then we'll paste our application ID inside of here. And this is an environment variable that we're going to use to actually, well, connect to Passage, right? Okay, so now that we have that, what we can do for now is just clean up this directory a bit because we don't need everything inside of here. So for now, I'm going to delete a few files, specifically all of these ones. So app.css, app.test.js, logo, report web vitals, and setup test. We don't need any of those. So let's delete those. Now let's go do index.js. Let's get rid of the import of web vitals. Let's get rid of that. Let's go to app.js. Let's get rid of those imports, and let's clear everything inside of here. And for now, let's just put a p tag and say hello world, exclamation point. Okay, nice. So we've cleaned all of that up. Now what we're going to do is run our React front end. So let's go npm start. And we got an issue. It says package.json, a complete log. This is related to npm not being able to find. Oh, it's because I did not go into the front end directory. So let's go cd front end where our app actually is, and then npm start. Okay, so it's going to take a second to run, but now we should be able to access the React front end from this ngrok URL because it's forwarding the requests to there. So let me just copy this URL here. Okay, let's grab all of that. Let's go here and let's paste that. And then notice it's going to show me hello world. Okay, awesome. So ngrok URL is working, React app is running, passage account is created. Now let's start actually setting up the React application that's going to allow us to log in and use that authentication. So we're going to create two pages, one that's going to be the login page, another that's going to be the profile page. So we need some way to route between those. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to stop this application and I'm going to import a few packages that we need. So the first one is going to be React Router DOM. So we're going to install React Router DOM like that. Let's see if I can make this a bit easier to read. Okay. npm install React Router DOM. It'd be helpful if I typed npm correctly. Okay, once that's done, I'll be right back. Okay, that is finished. Then we are going to install the package for passage. So I'm going to type npm install at, and then this is passage identity. I think I spelled that correctly, / passage auth. And then this is going to be at, and we want a specific version here, 0.1.0. And then this is going to be the beta dot and then 2.7. Okay, so that's a specific one we want. It's just the most up-to-date one. That's why I'm installing it. Okay, again, pause the video if you need to type in that command. Once that's done, I will be right back. Okay, so that is finished. Now that we have done that, we want to set up two pages, as I was saying, the login page and the profile page. So I'm going to make a new folder here called components. And inside of the components, I'm going to put a profile.js, and I'm also going to put a login.js. And for now, let's just put some kind of boilerplate components here. So I'm going to say export default, and then this will be login, and this needs to be a function. Okay, and let's simply return from here a p tag that just says login. Let's copy that. Let's put the same in profile, except we're of course going to change login to be profile. Okay, now let's go to app.js and let's set up the router so that we can go between the different pages. So I'm going to say import, and let's import a link. Actually, not a link. Let's import a route, our routes, and then our browser router like that. If we could type this properly, of course, from, and then this is going to be React Router -DOM. Okay, and now that we have that, we want to import our two components. So I'm going to import profile from, and then this is going to be ./components/profile. And then same for login. Import login from components/login. Okay, now that we have that, let's set up the different routes. So we're going to have our browser router like that. Should have just typed it properly. And then inside of here, let's do the tag properly this time. We want to have our different routes. So we'll have our routes like that. Okay, and then we need our individual routes. So we'll put them in here, and these can be, I guess, self-ending tags, whatever you call those. Okay, so we're going to have two routes. The first route is going to have an element which is equal to, and then this is going to be the login element. Okay, and again, we can just close the tag in itself. And the path for this is going to be /. So when you go to /, it'll just bring you to the login page. That's fine. And we'll make that an exact path. Okay, then we're going to have an element. This is going to be equal to profile. And then the path is going to be equal to not /. We also don't need exact. It'll just be /profile. Okay, so now that should be the routing for our application so we can get to the different components. So let's test that out. Let's just rerun our application here. So npm start. Okay, and I hope my URL didn't change. Actually, it looked like my URL might have changed, so I might have to fix something here in a second. Let's see if I refresh this. Okay, no, looks like we're all good. So URL did not change. For some reason, I thought it did. But if I go to / and then profile, brings me to profile. And if I just go to /, brings me to the login page. Nice. So that is working. Now let's code the login page. So for login, you're going to see how extremely simple this is. But I'm just going to say import, and then this is at passage identity / passage auth. Now that we've done that, what we can do is just use a component from that module, package, library, whatever you want to call it. First, though, let's just make the page look a little bit nicer. So let's say div, let's put an h1 tag, okay, /h1. Let's just say passage demo. And then let's put the component I was talking about. This component, I believe, is just passage. Actually, I don't think it's login. I think it's auth. I need to have a look here though and see. Yeah, it's going to be passage auth. So a few other components you can use as well, but for now we're just going to use the auth component. And then we need to put here the app ID. Now the app ID is stored in our env file. So the way that we access that is we say process.env dot, and then let's just copy this here so we don't mistype it. Okay, let's go to login and let's paste it. And that is literally all we need for the component. Now, this is going to show a login form and a register form and allow us to create new users. Again, you can customize that if you want. And if you wanted to add more fields, like when you're signing up, you want to collect a first name, a last name, a profile photo, that type of stuff, there is a way to do that with Passage. You also can connect all of your users from Passage to a local database by just associating the Passage user ID in your local database. I assume you guys can figure that out. I'll show you like all the users in Passage in a few minutes, but I just wanted to mention that if you want to customize this more, you totally can do that. I'm just showing you kind of the most basic option here. Anyways, we have our Passage demo. We have this. Let me just add a class here just so that we center everything. So I'm going to call this container, and let's go to index.css and let's just write the container class here before I forget. So container, I just want the, what do you call this? The display to be flex. I want the flex direction to be column, and I want to align the items in the center, and I think that should be good. Okay, so now that we have that, let's have a look at our login page. So let's refresh. And notice we get our Passage demo. We have login, email address, and then if we want to, we can register. So let's just try registering for now. Let's type in an email, techwithtim@gmail.com. Okay, you have to actually have access to the email, so make sure you type in the correct email. Okay, sign in with biometrics. Let's just zoom in here. Let's register. And then again, if you're on your phone or something, it'd show your Face ID, but since I don't have that, it's just showing me the regular PIN. Okay, then it redirected me to profile because I signed in. Now, if we go to Passage, we can refresh the dashboard here and notice that I was signed in. I just created a new account. So we have one user, 100% with biometrics, 0% magic links. So if you're signing in with email, I'm like, clicking the link in your email, that'll go up obviously. And if we want, we could change this. So if I go to branding, maybe I want to change the color. Can I click on this? Nice. Let's make it like a red or something. And then that's how the email will look, as well as, actually, I don't know if this is just the email. Yeah, okay. Customize emails sent by Passage with your company's branding. Okay, so that's just going to change the email, but that's fine. Let's change it anyways. Okay, going back here, I actually wanted to show you users. So here we have users. I have the user ID. I have the sign up date, last login, all of that. And all of this information you can get access to in the front end or in the back end. And I'll show you briefly how to do that. Anyways, there you go. That is what I wanted to show you. We just implemented authentication. Now, though, let's try to sign in. So let's go back to just slash and let's sign in. So techwithtim@gmail.com. Continue. Okay. Let's type in our PIN. Boom, brings me back to profile and signs me in. Now, of course, we're not verifying if we're actually authenticated. That's what we're going to do now. But that was the basics on actually creating and signing up for accounts and having those all stored in the cloud. You don't have to store those yourself. Okay, so now that we've made login, what we want to do is for the profile page, we want to verify if the user is signed in or not. If they're not signed in, I don't want to show them the page. If they are signed in, then of course I'll show it to them. So I'm going to make a hook here, and this hook is just going to be a flexible way that allows me from anywhere in my app to grab information about a user and see if they're logged in. Now, there's a few other ways to do this. Again, I'm just showing you some basics here, but for now, let's make a hook. The hook's going to be called use current user. Okay. And then inside of here, we're going to say export, and this is going to be function, and then use current user. Okay. And inside of here, we're just going to write something that will give us the information about the current user. So we're going to say const, and then this is going to be is equal to use state. So let's just import use state, and then I'll write the variables. So let's go import use state. While we're at it, we need use effect as well, from, and then React. Okay, we're going to say const, and then what do we want to call this? I guess this is going to be result, and then set result. that will be equal to use state. And then the default state that we want here is 3 pieces of information. We want is loading. So are we loading or not? So by default, that will be true. Okay. We also want to have is authorized. Okay. By default, that's going to be false. And then we want the username of the user, which for now is going to be username. So whenever we call this hook here, what I'm going to do is have a use effect. And the use effect is just going to get the current user and essentially check if they're signed in from passage. So let me just look at my other screen here. We need to import something. So we're going to say import, and then this is going to be passage user like that from, and then this will be at passage identity / passage auth / passage user. Okay, so the passage user class allows us to get access to the user's information, like their email or their phone number or whatever they signed up with, as well as get their user ID and a bunch of other stuff. For now, we'll just get the username and check if they're signed in, but just keep in mind you can use the class for a lot more. So inside of here, we want to do the following. We're going to say let, and then this is going to be passage user, and just empty parentheses like this, dot get user like that, or not get user. This is going to be user info like that. And then this will be a promise. We're going to say dot then, and we're going to say user info. And then inside of here, we'll process the user info. Now, first, I'm just going to make a variable here, say const cancel request is equal to false. Okay. And inside of here, we want to handle this data. So I'm going to say if we have canceled the request by the time that this promise is occurring, then let's just return, or this is resolving, sorry. Otherwise, though, we're going to check if we have some user data. So we're going to say if user info is equal to undefined, then that means that we are not signed in. So if it's equal to undefined, then what we want to do is say set result. And the result that we want to set is actually going to be this, except is loading is going to be false. So here, make that false. Okay, so if we have no user info, that means no user is currently signed in. And so we set the result, say, okay, we're no longer loading, you are not authorized, and you don't have a username. Otherwise, though, so let's make sure we return here. Then what we'll do is say set result. And in a similar way, we're going to now set the result, but we're going to say true. This is going to be false. And then we're going to grab the user's information. So let me, why is this? Okay. So let me now grab the username. So the way I do that is I say user info dot username. But the thing is, users can sign up with their username or phone number. Show that to you in a second. So I'm going to check if it has a username. If it does, I'll use the username. Otherwise, I will use the phone. And sorry, is it username or is it email? I think it's email. So let's change that to email. Yes, it is indeed email. Okay, so we'll go through this hook in a second. I think it's fairly straightforward, but let me just show you something here. If you go to passage and you go to authentication, you can change this so that you can have email or phone number, only email or only phone. So that's what I'm talking about and why we're checking for a phone number. Anyways, that's that. A few more things we need to do here is inside of the use effect. So I think the use effect ends right here. Let's add our square brackets. Let's also have a return and then a cleanup operation. And for the cleanup operation here, what we're going to do is cancel request is equal to true. Okay. And then lastly here, we're going to return whatever the result is here that is stored inside of our state from the hook. So now use this hook inside of any component and you can check if the user is authorized. All right. So let's close the hook. Now let's go to profile and let's use the hook. So I'm going to say import use current like this user from, and then this is going to be / component / and then use current user, believe, or not component, sorry. It's going to be hooks. Okay. Now that we have that, let's use the hook. So I'm going to say const. We have 3 pieces of information that we want. We want to get the is loading, the is authorized, and then the username. And this will be equal to, and then the use current user. Okay. Now that we have that, what I can do is the following. I can say, well, if we are loading, so if is loading, then just return null, because we don't want to show anything if we're loading. Then we're going to say, well, if you're not authorized, so if not is authorized, then let's just return something that says, hey, you need to sign in to view this page. So let's go with a p tag, just very basic. Let's say you must sign in to view this page, exclamation point, and then we can just make this a link. So let's change this to login, and let's import a link here. So let's say import link from React router DOM. Okay, and then this will be link spelt correctly. Let's place login inside of here. And then let's say this is going to, and then just slash because that's our login page. Okay, so that's what happens if we're not authorized. Otherwise, let's just say you are signed in as, and let's do a strong tag, and let's put username inside of there. My autocomplete knows exactly what I want. Okay, let's end the p tag, and looks like we are good for now for the profile page. So hopefully what will happen now is if we go to the profile page and we are not signed in, it will show us, hey, you must sign in, you are unauthorized. But if we are signed in, then it will just show us whatever our username is. So let's test this out now. Compiled with one error. What is the error? It says hooks, use current user does not exist. All right, the issue is that I called this hook instead of hooks. So let's rename that directory. And now I think we should be good and awesome. Okay. Also, sorry, this is const. I need to just change this to be let because we actually changed that variable. So let's change that. Okay, now that we've done that, let's go here and let's refresh. Okay, and what's the problem now? Okay, it says you are signed in as techwithtim@gmail.com. Now, the reason it's showing me that is because my sign-in data is stored in a session, or at least the fact that I'm signed in is stored in a session. Now, if you want to change when that expires, you can go here to session management and change this to say like 5 minutes instead of 60 minutes. So then every 5 minutes, you would have to sign in again. In this case, that's fine, but there you go. You can see that it's showing me my data. And again, we're getting that from the hook that I created. So now let's go back to login. Let's go back to slash. Okay, and everything seems to be working. Nice. So there we go. That is all functioning. The profile page is working. And really, that's all you need for front-end authentication, right? If you want to check if someone's authenticated, then you can just look at the is authorized right here, then render something or not render something. Now, there's a few other ways that you can handle this. Again, I'm not showing you everything here. But now what I want to do is build out the backend and show you how we send an authenticated request to a Flask backend. So if you want to create maybe an API, or you maybe want to do what I'm doing, sending an authenticated request and make sure the user is signed in before they get access to, say, user data, then you can do that. So this will be a little bit less time consuming, but will still take us a few minutes. Let's make a new terminal here. So let's go here for a new one. And let's make a new directory here, and let's call this backend. And we're going to start setting up a Flask project. Okay, so we need to install a few things here with pip. Let me just throw them up on the screen. You guys can pause and install them one by one if you want. We need passage identity greater than or equal to 1.2.3, Flask, requests, and then python.env. Now, all of these will be available from the link in the description. So all the code I write will be on GitHub. So you guys can just grab this requirements.txt file and install it directly, or copy line by line if you want. But to install this, you type pip install and then, name of requirement here. I won't go through because I already have them installed. If pip doesn't work for you, try pip3. And if that doesn't work for you, try python3-m and then pip install name of requirement, or you can try python-m pip install. One of those hopefully should work for you for installing those modules. Anyways, I'm assuming you have those installed at this point. Now we're going to go inside of backend. I'm going to create another directory here called app, and I'm going to start coding a few things out. So inside of backend, I'm going to create a .env file. And inside of here, we need to have a few pieces of data for our, passage app. So the first thing we want is the app ID, which I can just grab from right here. So let's just paste that in here. We're going to call it passage app ID. And then we also want to get the passage API token, which is something that we need to create. So let me just see what I called this variable here. I think it's just passage underscore API underscore key. And that's going to be equal to, and then we're going to have to grab that from the console. So to do that, let's go here to our dashboard. Let's go to API keys. It's fine. We don't need to save that. And let's create a new API key here. I'll just give its name first. Let's copy the key. Make sure you copy it now. You can't view it after. And then I'm going to paste it here. Now, of course, you don't want to share this with people. I'm just showing you because after this video is gone, I'm going to delete this application. Okay, so we have our .env file. Next, what we're going to do is make a new file here called run.py. Now, inside of run.py, we'll write some code that will run our Flask app. But before we can do that, we need to create our Flask app. So inside of app, I'm going to make a folder called init.py, or not a folder, sorry, a file called init.py. I'm going to make another folder here, or another file called main.py. And I think that's all I need. Yeah, that looks good to me. Okay, so inside of init.py, we're going to set up our Flask app. So we're going to say from Flask import, and then that's going to be Flask. And then I'm going to say define create underscore app. This will be a function that we call to make an app. I'm going to say app is equal to Flask. We need to pass underscore underscore name underscore underscore. And then I'm going to import something from my main file that we've yet to create. I'm going to say from.main import auth as, and then this will be auth underscore blueprint. We're going to use Flask blueprints, just a way to separate out our application. And then I'm going to say app.register underscore blueprint, and I'm going to pass the auth underscore blueprint. My autocomplete did not want to help me there. Okay, then we're going to return the app. Nice. So I understand this might be confusing because we haven't yet coded out this file, but you'll see very quickly why we're doing that. Inside of our main.py file now, we're going to say from Flask import. We're going to import request. We're going to import blueprint. We're going to import something called G. And we're going to import, actually, I think that's all, one more. We need JSONify. Okay. Then we're going to import OS. And we're going to import something from passage. So we're going to say from passage and then identity, I believe, is what it's called. We're going to import passage as well as passage error. Now I'll go through all of this in a second. I just need to get our imports down. We're now going to create our blueprint. So I'm going to say auth is equal to, and this is going to be a blueprint, and it will be called auth, and it will have name. So just to slow down here, we did our different imports that we need, create our auth blueprint. If we go to init.py, that's exactly what we're importing here, right? And then registering that as a blueprint. So now we can write views inside of this file. Okay, now we're going to go to run.py, and we're going to do a few things in run.py. This is going to be the entry point of our Flask app. I'm going to say import app or from app, which is the name of this directory. We're going to say import and then create underscore app. This is how we're going to create our Flask application. I'm then going to say from.env import, and this is going to be load.env and find.env. Now this is how we're going to load this .env file that you can see so we get the environment variables. You should have installed this as python.env before we started here. And I'm going to say load.env, and I'm going to put find.env, and this will load that environment variable file for us. I'm then going to make my Flask app. I'm going to say Flask app is equal to create app. And I'm going to say if underscore underscore name underscore underscore is equal to main, then Flask app dot run, and we'll run this in debug equals true mode. Now, if you want to change the port or the host, you can do that. I don't care. I'll just leave it the same. Okay. So we have run. We have init.py. Now all we have to do is code out main.py. So what we can do here is we can write kind of a standard view, and then we can have passage authenticate all of the requests to the views or to the endpoints that we set up. So let's handle kind of the passage middleware. That's what you could call it here. And then once that's done, all of the requests that we send to anything decorated with this auth decorator will be authenticated automatically by passage. So the first thing we're going to do is say passage underscore API underscore key is equal to os.environ.get passage API key. And then we want the app ID. So the passage, let's just go app underscore ID is equal to passage app underscore ID. And let's space those out and just verify that we named these correctly. Wrong env file. Passage API key, passage app ID. Okay, looks good. So now that we have our environment variables, we're going to have a try except. So I'm going to say try, and PSG standing for passage is going to be equal to passage like that. And I'm going to initialize this with the app ID and the API key. And then I think that is fine for now. Okay, so now that we've initialized passage, we're going to accept A, and then this is going to be a passage exception. or passage error as E. And I'm just going to print out whatever E is. And then I'm going to exit, meaning we're just going to quit the application if for some reason we could not load passage, and we'll just print out the error first. Okay. Now we're going to set up kind of the middleware here. We've connected to passage, assuming that our information is correct. And I'm going to say auth.before request. Now, if you haven't seen this before in Flask, this is a decorator you can use that will run a function before all of your requests, so you can do stuff like authentication. So here I'm going to say define before request. We don't need to take in a request. And what we're going to do is try to authenticate the request using passage. And if we can't do that, then we're going to return some JSON that says you are unauthorized, you cannot view this page, or you cannot view this route, whatever. So I'm going to say try, and this is going to be g.user is equal to psg dot, and then this is going to be authenticate, and then request like that. And we're going to pass in the request object that we imported right here. Okay, and then I'm going to say accept, and we can accept a passage error again. Not password reset error. This is passage error as E. And then what we're going to do is return JSONify, and then we can return the error, and we can return E, or we can return our own custom message. In this case, we'll just return E. Okay, so this is going to run before every single request to any of our authentication endpoints. So now, lastly, we can do something like .auth or auth dot, and then whatever we want this root to be. So we'll say root, and this could be like /get user info. Okay, and the methods we'll accept here will just be get, and I'm going to say define, and we'll go get user info. And now inside of here, we can get the current user by doing the following. We can say psg underscore user is equal to, and then this is going to be psg.getUser, and we're going to say g.user. Okay, and then I can say identifier is equal to an empty string, and we're almost done here. Don't worry, I know I've gone through a lot. I'm going to say if psg underscore user dot email. So if they signed in with their email essentially, then we're going to say the identifier is equal to psg dot email, elif, and then this will be psg user dot, and this will be phone. So if they signed in with their phone number instead, then the identifier will be psg.phone. And then lastly, we can return JSONify identifier, and just tell what the identifier is for the current user that's signed in, just a test route. Again, there's a lot more stuff you can do here with the user and more information that you can get. Okay, I know I just went through a lot. Quick recap here. We get the information from our environment variables. We then set up the passage object. Okay, if there's an error, then we're going to exit and print it out. We set up our authentication middleware, if you want to call it that. This is going to happen before all of the requests. So we're going to try to get the current user by authenticating the requests using authenticate request from passage. If we are able to do that, we'll store it in G. And then if we can't, we're going to return whatever the error was because the user is unauthorized. Then we set up, this needs to be a root, not router, the get user info root. Now here we're going to get the user, find their identifier, and then simply return it to whoever called this, okay? There you go. That is all we need for our backend. So let's now run this. Let's go Python. We need to cd into backend, so cd into backend, and then Python run.py. Fingers crossed, everything will work, and there we go. Okay, so it is now running. So let's go ngrok split terminal. Okay, that's all working. Let's go here and refresh. And now what we need to do is we need to send a request to the backend and then get that information. So to do that, we're going to go to our package.json. We're going to add something in here called proxy. And what this allows us to do is proxy a request to a backend. So for the URL that we want here, we're just going to say http:/localhost:/, and then this is going to be port 5000. That's the port that we're running Flask on. So now any request that's not handled by a front end will be proxied to this URL right here, our backend, and then we'll be able to get the result. So now if I do something like go to profile, let's make a function that's going to send a request to the backend. So I'm going to say function, and then this will be, send request. Okay. And what we can do is say fetch. We can fetch /get user info. I know we already have the info, but we're just doing a test here, right? And then I can say dot, and then, okay. and we can say response, we can say res.json, okay? And then .then, we can get our data, and we can say data like that, and we can just print it out and have a look at it for now. So console.log, and then data, and then let's just add a button that will allow us to actually do that. So let's add a button. I guess we'll make this a div now, or actually that could be a P, and then this will be a div. Okay. Let's go button, and inside of here, we'll just say send request to backend, and this will be on click equal to send request. All right, let's try this now. So let's go here, let's refresh, let's go to our profile. We are signed in. Let's send a request to the backend. Let's look in the console, and it says uncaught token expected JSON. Okay, let me have a quick look here, and I'll be right back. All right, so I actually just loaded the application here again after that error was occurring, and I got this invalid host header. So what I did was I just reran the npm command just because I thought it wasn't actually reading the proxy, and then I got this issue. Now, the fix to this issue is a little bit weird, but essentially since we're using ngrok, we're getting kind of this weird host error where it's not allowing us to connect to the React app. So what I need to do is add something here in my environment variable file for the React application, not for the backend. Now, this is a kind of a hilarious thing that I have to add, but I'm just going to paste it in here. It's dangerously disable host check. So obviously you don't want to do this in production, but for now this is fine. And it just disables checking the host so that hopefully now we're not going to get this error. Now I need to reload this. So we reload the environment variable. So let's do that. And then when I go back here, hopefully all should be good. Okay, so everything is working fine now. So let's go back to /profile and let's try to send a request to the backend. And then notice I get my identifier here as tech with Tim. All right, so that's pretty much all I needed to show you. Now, I will quickly mention kind of how this is working a little bit more on the back end. So if we go to our Flask application, which is running here, and let's just have a look at Flask. So let's go to main.py. Really what this actually does when you add this kind of middleware section here and you're authenticating the request is it looks for a cookie or it looks for a header that contains a JWT token, which is kind of your authentication token. Now that will automatically be proxied to the backend based on the way that we've done this. So we don't have to manually send it. But what happens is when you sign in here, so let's just go back to login, there's a cookie and there's like a token that's stored in local storage. And that's kind of like your session data, right? That's telling Passage that you're signed in, you're authenticated. And that's how current user here is able to get your data by using the token that's stored in local storage in the session data, whatever. So if you want to manually access that data, what you can do is the following. So let's go to profile here and let's just print it out. I guess I can just print it out like, actually, where would it make sense to show it? Maybe I could show it here. So let's just put it in a p tag. And I can do something like local storage and then .get item. And I believe the name of this is going to be passage auth token or something along those lines. I might be wrong, but let's see if that's what it is. So let's go to /profile. Okay, and there you go. So it's going to show the token. So obviously, you don't want to show this token to people, but this token is being sent automatically to the backend, and that's how it's authenticating us. If you don't have this token, or if I like change the token, then it's not going to work, and you'll see that we won't be able to access that page. Sorry for the abrupt cut there. My cat was going crazy. Had to take her out of the room. Anyways, point is you have this in local storage. You also have this stored in a cookie, and that data is going to be forwarded again to the backend. That's how it's authenticated. So I just wanted to show you can get access to that manually. If you're sending, you want to send it as a header or however you're going to, verify it or check it. Just wanted to mention that so that you have that information. With that said, I think I'm going to wrap up the video here. It's a little bit longer than I was expecting it to be, but I obviously wanted to build out kind of an entire project and show you how we set up everything from the back end to the front end and link them together. But when you really look at what's going on for the authentication here, again, it's only a few lines of code. Like if we go to login, here we go. We have, you could call this 1 line of code, 3 lines of code, whatever. We have an app ID. And then we wrote this hook, which, is more complicated than it needs to be. It's good. It's flexible. You can use it in your app. But really, all you need is this. Passage user.userinfo.then, grab the info, look and see if you have it undefined or not, grab the email, grab the phone number. There's some other data you can get too. And there you go. You have pretty much everything that you need for user authentication. All of your users will be stored by passage. You can go and have a look at the dashboard. You can change the emails. You can change the form. You can customize as you please. You can link this with a database that you have in your application for storing user data. All kinds of stuff you can do with Passage. So with that said, I will end it here. Thanks again to Passage for sponsoring this video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another one.